On today's show, the shorthanded Atlanta Hawks hold serve at home against the Denver Nuggets. In fact, the Hawks led almost the entire game against Denver in pretty impressive fashion without Trae Young, without John Collins, without DeAndre Hunter. Lots of across-the-board contributions from this Hawks team led by Dejounte Murray and AJ Griffin. We'll get into all of what transpired and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1361 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday evening into Saturday. And thank you for joining us, as always, in the podcast, making us your first listen each and every day. Check us out across podcast platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Stitcher, Odyssey, TuneIn Radio, and on the video side, we are on YouTube with every episode of the show. And also, today's podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. And the Hawks opened up the night in a pretty interesting position. The Hawks were banged up at a pretty high level throughout the day. Lots of injury report stuff that we'll talk about in a second. The Hawks were underdogs at home against the Denver Nuggets because of the fact that Trae Young was not available for the Hawks in this game, nor was John Collins or DeAndre Hunter. But the Hawks led for the vast majority of this game, and in fact, led comfortably for most of the second half, ultimately winning by an 8-point margin, and it was not necessarily in doubt in the final couple of minutes. So a very impressive performance across the board for the Hawks, especially when it comes to being undermanned, not having everybody available. And I'm going to change course on what I usually do on the podcast. I'm going to open up the podcast with the post-game, actually, from Nate McMillan. The first answer that he gave, you can kind of see that Nate was more jovial than usual after this one. And here's what he had to say after the game was over.
Nate, a pretty good performance.
That wasn't pretty good. That was great. It really was. I'll just start off just respect for these guys and how they just came together and played the game together for 48 minutes. We saw this in Orlando. We had guys to go down and we had guys to step up and play. I thought DJ tonight did a great job of establishing the tempo from start to finish, running the team, managing the team, and all of our guys who stepped in the starting roles, Jalen, AJ, Jarrett, Clint, those guys just played great basketball. It was a team effort tonight. I know we had some big time individual performances, but total team effort tonight, beating a really good team in Denver.
Honestly, I could play the entire thing for you, and Nate talked for 5+ minutes about different topics and different players, and there was definitely a sense of joy from the Hawks after this one when it comes to Bogdanovic, when it comes to Dejounte Murray, AJ Griffin, the guys that spoke to the media after the game, and just generally up and down the roster. It was an impressive home win. You never want to go crazy about one win out of 82, but the Hawks played very, very well in this game, and they definitely outpaced their available talent in this one. So I just wanted to lead with that. And we'll dive in now to what transpired. So I say all that. The injury report was really a wild ride in the last 24 hours or so. It was already busy on Thursday. I talked about that a little bit on the show yesterday. And by the way, if you missed it, I did a 2-part deep dive episode with my friend Tyler Jones. And on part 1, I talked about the injury stuff for this game, as well as a little bit of a preview of Hawks Nuggets. And it was already busy. Then it became even wilder on Friday. So Trae Young was added midday to the injury report as questionable with shoulder soreness. And then Trent Forrest was ruled out at the same time with a concussion evaluation after he actually took part in shoot around and all of that. So as of Friday afternoon, the Hawks had only 6 guys available to play at one point. And then it became 7. And then it was 4 guys out and 5 guys questionable. Nate McMillan pregame, in his typical fashion, did not really answer anything when it came to who was available or any kind of speculation. But he did say, kind of in slip fashion, that 10 guys would be available for the Hawks, and he wouldn't say who it was. It ended up being 11, actually, by the time the game actually started. But during Nate's press conference, it was actually kind of funny. But Bogdan Bogdanovic posted on Instagram that he was going to be able to play. So that was the first domino, was that Bogey, who has not played in more than 7 months after a offseason procedure on his knee, he actually said after the game, as I'll play for you later on in the show, that he had so much pain at times last year down the stretch of the season that he was kind of unable to sleep. That's how bad it was at times. It took a while for him to get back, but he is now back as of today. That was the positive headliner of the night for the Hawks before tip-off, was that Bogey was able to go. Ended up with 11 guys available, but Trae Young was not one of them. So Trae missed the game. The Hawks, I will say, and I said this before the game even started, they usually do a pretty good job at staying competitive and playing fairly well without Trae in full game increments. Now, I will say this right now: they are not better without Trae. There's I think most of that stuff is kind of jokes at this point in time about Trae not being there, but they've done a good job dating back for years now. Famously, the Hawks have been so bad with Trae off the court in terms of the on-off splits, really his entire career. That's definitely been the case this year even. But in terms of full games scenarios like one-offs, they've done a pretty good job dating back to Brandon Goodwin winning games for them. This year, they won the game against Milwaukee without him. And then tonight, now they're 2-0 without Trae this year. So credit to everybody involved. And we'll get into all of what transpired later on, of course. On the Denver side, Michael Porter Jr. missed this one. That's definitely a loss for them. Jamal Murray was questionable, ended up playing, and they were definitely healthier than the Hawks were in this spot for sure. And our friends at BetOnline, who I always want to give you the context about the betting line coming into the night. Because of the injuries, there were so many swings in this one. The Hawks were actually favored initially on Thursday before the injury reports came out. Then it was Denver by a couple of points. Then it became Denver by 5 points by tip-off, and obviously the Hawks ended up upsetting that and winning the game on the floor. So we'll get into the game now. And early, honestly, the first salvo was the Hawks. And I said it before, but the Hawks led for basically 47 and a half minutes of this game. And part of that was that they came out of the gate flying. So they started Dejounte Murray, as you'd expect, AJ Griffin, Jarrett Culver, Jalen Johnson, and Clint Capella. So a couple different options there. They could have gone with Aaron Holiday, could have gone with someone who was a little bit more offensively inclined than Culver, but they also was the first start of Jalen Johnson's career, and they were starting out on a two-way contract. Culver, definitely playing well the last couple of games, but if you told me he was going to start games by December 2nd, I would have been definitely surprised by that. And some questionable spacing with that group for sure. In fact, really only Griffin is a plus shooter of those five, but it ended up working at a fairly high level, especially early on. It was a 13-2 run by the Hawks out of the gate. They made their first 6 shots and scored efficiently, definitely to start the game. 8 points in the paint, and then Murray and Griffin hit jump shots. Culver got downhill twice off the dribble to create some good stuff. Murray had 3 assists, and the Hawks were playing quite well. Hilariously, the first missed shot of the game with Clint Capella having to be forced to take a shot clock buzzing shot with like 21 feet. It was kind of funny. That was the first miss of the night. Kind of amusing on that level. Jalen, though, had a good possession sequence. And honestly, he was really good the entire night. Got a defensive rebound, went coast to coast with it for a layup, and then knocked out a jump shot actually in pretty confident fashion moments later. Rotationally, there weren't a lot of surprises. There were 11 guys available, and 9 of the 11 played. No Frank Kaminsky in this game, and no Tyrese Martin, who was actually recently recalled from the G League. He had been there longer than everybody else had been there. And if you told me coming in to the game, once I knew who was playing, that 2 guys were not going to play, I would have probably guessed Tyrese Martin and Frank Kaminsky. They had to basically choose one of Vit Krejci or Tyrese Martin for the 9th man role. And then the only way that Frank was going to play is if it was going to be one of those lineups with he and Okongwu playing together. But basically that was kind of expected across the board. Bogey was the first sub, got a huge ovation from the home crowd. He came in mid-quarter for Culver. Also the first time that he's ever played in a game with either Dejounte Murray or AJ Griffin, in addition to guys like Vit Krejci. But even in the starting lineup, he started guys who are prominent on this organization, like Murray and Griffin. Bogey's never played with those guys before. It's kind of interesting to kind of remember that. He definitely was not shy. That's the biggest thing about Bogey, is that he always plays with confidence. He talked about this after the game, but he was definitely enthused by the ovation by the crowd. But he didn't look terrible by any means. Like, obviously his legs probably have to get under him a little bit. He talks about the speed of the game being a little bit too much for him at this point in time, but he wasn't making a ton of shots, but he was looking assertive anyway. He was not like playing timidly, and that's a good sign for everybody involved. It was Krejci, it was Aaron Holiday as the backup point guard in this spot. Whenever AJ was on the floor, it was Aaron on the court. Actually played pretty well in this game, I thought. But Denver had a couple nice runs, an 8-0 run late in the first quarter to kind of cut into the lead a little bit. The Hawks had their first outage of the game offensively. Bogey made his first bucket with like a minute to go in the first quarter, and then Denver made a 3 at the very end of the quarter to get back within 3. The Hawks shot the ball very well early and often in this game, which was fun to see and definitely a part of the solution in this game. It started very small in the second quarter, actually. It was kind of funny. It was a Holiday, Griffin, Bogdanovic, Krejci, and a Kongwu lineup. So Krejci has like power forward height, but he's definitely more of a perimeter player for sure. So they basically played Aaron Holiday, who's very small, and then 3 wings and a Kongwu. And that was notable to me. That it's one of those things where they don't really have power forward size players. Like Jalen Johnson is the only guy right now with Collins out that is really power forward sized that was on the floor. So there you go. AJ had a great drive and dish to Kongwu for a layup early in the quarter. He was the first guy to reach double digits for the Hawks in this game scoring wise, and actually finished only behind Murray in scoring. Did AJ? Bogey played 11 consecutive minutes, which seemed to be pretty aggressive. In fact, he did that both times. I don't know if that was a training staff decision or anything like that, but certainly a notable thing for me. I would not have guessed that Bogey played that many minutes in a row, but maybe that was preferred for some reason. A couple of highlight dunks in the third quarter. In the second quarter. Okongwu had a nice dunk as the trailer on a fast break, and then Jalen Johnson had a tip dunk off a Capella miss. Late in the game, the Krejci had one that was a huge one as well. The Hawks were only up by 2 with like 6 minutes to go in the first half. Then they closed on a big run, an 18-6 run at the end of the quarter to go up by 14 at halftime. It was a fantastic half of basketball, a 133 offensive rating. They shot 63% from the floor in the first half, the first time all season in any half. So basically it was the 25th half of the season, and the first time the Hawks had shot 6% or more in a half of basketball was the first half without Trae Young and without John Collins and without DeAndre Hunter, because basketball is weird. 32 points in the paint. They had 16 assists in the first half. Awesome stuff there. Dejounte had 14 points, including all 5 of his shots going in the second quarter. And then Jalen Johnson had a career high in rebounds and assists by the time halftime even arrived. Granted, it was his first start ever, but definitely some funny stuff there with regard to the numbers, and the Hawks were flying high. It was not always that easy. The second half, I should say, was not quite as forgiving. They actually lost the second half by 6 points, but still up by 14, and the tone was set, and they were able to kind of float from there, as we'll get into in a moment. But first, before we do all of that, a word from our sponsors on the show today. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline, and BetOnline is, of course, always where you want to be for the sports information that you're looking for, including stats, news, and analysis this season. December is here, and the NBA is in full swing, playing football going on as well, soccer, especially right now with the World Cup, hockey, and other action happening across the sports world. Get the latest odds and trends for every pro and college league they're looking for at BetOnline. That includes, of course, those big-time sports as well as some esports. They have golf, and they have tennis, and auto racing, and horse racing, and much more. BetOnline is also very useful if you're looking at the latest for the Hawks, including the nightly game odds and totals, as well as the futures market, how it looks on the team side, or the individual award stuff going on with the Hawks. And BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your sports betting fix. If you have a love for sports podcasts, you can also find those at BetOnline, in addition to the Locked On Hawks podcast you're listening to right now. And check out BetOnline on your mobile device, on your computer, to learn more about all the trends and the action in the sports world. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, and the second half certainly started out in poor fashion. The Hawks' worst stretch of the game was the first few minutes of the third quarter. Denver definitely was trying to juice the pace. And I made note of that on Twitter, and then it was actually echoed by Nate McMillan after the game in his comments. Denver definitely was trying to intentionally play fast and run in the third quarter, and it worked. They had 3 buckets in a row in transition at one point, which caused a timeout by McMillan, and it was a 17-5 overall run by the Nuggets to go from the Hawks up by 14 up by 2 in a hurry. The lead was gone, and it felt like things were really teetering at that point. They made some jump shots in timely fashion. It was mostly AJ Griffin, a couple of makes. I know Murray made one, and then even Culver made one that was actually a big shot. His one jumper of the entire game that went in. The offense was definitely fine in the third quarter. The defense was definitely having some issues. Jokic was an MVP, as he has been the last couple of seasons. He was fantastic in the third quarter, taking it to the Hawks. And Capella got his 4th foul. That was part of the problems as well. The Hawks actually gave up the lead entirely at one point. The Nuggets tied the game, and then Jokic had a 3 after that to go up by 1 point, but that lasted only 1 possession. The Hawks trailed by 1 point for 1 possession in the entire game. Then it was a 12-2 run by the Hawks at the end of the third quarter. A Vic Krejci time dunk, which I talked about before, that got everybody excited. Kongwu made some jump shots, which is good to see. He was shooting the ball confidently and smoothly in this one. And then Murray had a pull-up 3 on the last possession. And basically the Hawks go into the fourth quarter up by 9, despite being down with like 3 minutes to go in the quarter, which was nice. Denver shot 67% from the floor in the third quarter, and Jokic had 15 points, 6 rebounds by himself, but the Hawks got it going on offense to keep up for the most part. They shot it well. They had a 129 offensive rating through 3 quarters, which is just absolutely excellent, even against a pretty shaky Nuggets defense for sure. And then in the fourth, It was largely without incident. Now, there were some questions along the way. It was never like super comfortable, but the Hawks were able to hold off a charge of some kind from the Nuggets. The Hawks were up by 12 early in the fourth quarter with Jokic on the bench. Denver, long story short, has been terrible without Jokic this year on the floor, and awesome when he plays. That was kind of the case here, especially the terrible part with him off the floor. But Aaron Holiday had a great stretch early in the fourth quarter, had 7 points in a row. They got the benefit also of Ish Smith, the Nuggets backup point guard, misses a wide open layup that was kind of funny to see an NBA player miss. Boogie made a three finally, which was nice to see. He was fired up, so was the crowd. And then a couple of like genuinely mind-blowing, impressive finishes from Jamal Murray got things to a tighter period. The lead was down to 8 with 7 minutes to go and a timeout from there. And then Nate called timeout again 70 seconds later. It was very, very fast because the Nuggets scored 5 more points in a row. And that was the one moment of the entire fourth quarter was the Hawks. The lead was down to 3. That came with AJ on the bench. He came back in after that, and order was restored pretty quickly. In fact, Denver had a 3 in the air from Murray that would have tied the game. But from there, the Hawks were the better team, and the Nuggets, I don't think, made a shot for the next 4 minutes or so. In fact, Griffin and Murray made buckets, kind of trading things off. And then Murray got to his floater a couple times on Aaron Gordon in one-on-one situations, and he made a couple of huge plays. That was the big one to go up by 7. Denver missed again. And then AJ got a offensive rebound off a mishap by Capella, who kind of lost the ball on what could have been a tip dunk. And it went straight to AJ for a floater to go up by 9 with 2 minutes to go. It was probably over then. There was a timeout. Denver missed 6 consecutive shots plus a turnover in this stretch. And then with Dejounte Murray's putback with 30 seconds to go, that was really the moment when it was officially over. And the Hawks kind of cruise controlled to the finish, up by 8 at the final buzzer. Offensively, it was really awesome. The fourth quarter was a little bit less efficient from Atlanta's offense, but for the whole game, even a 123 offensive rating, again, without Trey and without your starting forwards, to go out and do that, even against a defense that is pretty not great in Denver. They have been below average this year defensively. The Hawks shot 65% on twos in the game. That's obviously an elite figure. They were 10 of 28 from 3, which is totally just average, but also acceptable for this Hawks team. The shot diet was not that much different. People were kind of asking about that after the game. A lot of mid-range jump shots still from the Hawks. A lot of floaters from AJ. A lot of mid-rangers from Dejounte. They just made more of them than they had been making more of them recently. Murray having it going really helps. He was really good in this game. And then Griffin basically has been just foolproof in that mid-range area with his craft so far. And you definitely would not know that he was 19 years old watching him play on offense in particular. The assists did slow down. The ball movement that was a little bit worse in the second half, but still a totally fine 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio, 24-12 for Atlanta. And then they did well in the offensive glass in this game. And then the free throw line was kind of not a huge part of this game. Neither team got to the line a lot, but that's totally fine because the Hawks just kind of traded off not getting there for also holding Denver from that spot. And it was the first time all season the Hawks had 7 guys in double figures in this game. So the first time all year they set a new mark for field goal percentage in the first half, and then another season high with 7 guys reaching 10 points or more. Nice balance along the way, even with Murray obviously being the standout of the night on offense. Defensively, it was not great by the end, a 115 defensive rating by the numbers, but it was good most of the night. And Denver is very good on offense. They came into the night top 5 in both offensive rating and also shooting efficiency overall. That's a tough team to stop. Even without Porter, there's nothing wrong with the defense in this game. The Hawks played pretty well there. You sort of trade off a little bit. Trey, obviously his absence hurts the offense, helps the defense because he's a bad defender. We all know that. But then you trade that off with having DeAndre and Trey and John both out. So it's kind of maybe a wash because Trey is pretty bad, but also DeAndre and John are good defenders. So I'm kind of leave that there for now. But Denver shot it well in this game still, but the Hawks did well on the margins. They created 16 turnovers in this game. They did a good job on the glass. They allowed 13 shots at the free throw line in this one. So a really good across-the-board effort from this defense, and they were able to hold Jokic mostly in check. The third quarter was not really in check, but the rest of the game, he was really good, but not in a way that was totally destructive to the Hawks, which was definitely a positive at that point. So again, broadly speaking, the Hawks had real balance on offense. The ball moved for the most part. They did well on the glass, which is always an area of concern against teams that are bigger than you. But Jalen Johnson did a good job on the defensive glass in this game. The Hawks didn't turn the ball over really at all. The only guy who had a lot of turnovers in this game was Bogey, which is part of just the rust factor there. You take Bogey away, and they only had 8 turnovers the entire game. So we'll get into more of this in a second with the individual breakdowns. But the Hawks should have been the underdog in this game, roster-wise, and they were. even at home, but they go out and play a complete game. And like, it's 1 of 82, just in the same way that the loss to Houston was. You don't want to get too high or too low. This is a really, really, really nice win. And you can definitely kind of feel that from everybody involved, players, coaches after the game. And, Nate is very rarely excited. And it was even, it's tempered always with Nate, but he was definitely happy with the team and was praising them up and down the roster for their versatility and their resilience from this one, and talking about how they were down some guys in this game, but certainly able to come back and get a good win against a good team, because Denver's a good basketball team. They're, even with the loss, they're 14-8 this year. And, with Jokic and Murray, that's a good basketball team. So a nice one overall for the Hawks. We'll have more on that in a second, as well as the individual breakdowns in this game. But first, a word from our sponsor, I should say, on today's podcast. So 9 guys played for the Hawks in this win over Denver, and they were generally all reasonably effective. I think the 2 guys that I would say did not play particularly well were Bogdanovic, for obvious reasons and explainable reasons and nothing to be worried about, and maybe Vit Krejci. But even then, Vit had some nice moments. He had 3 assists and 2 rebounds, had that nice flash dunk. He was just okay defensively. He's kind of an adventure at this point, but he was fine. For your 9th man in a spot where you're so shorthanded, that was totally fine, and he played decently well. Bogey had some rust for sure. 4 turnovers and 2 of 9 from the floor. He was probably a negative on the whole, but like, the fact that he was out there is huge. He does get guarded like nobody else on this team does, other than maybe AJ and Trey. As far as the spacing elements are concerned, he's a beloved figure. Like, everyone loves Bogey, and he's a really solid vet guy. Defensively, he's physical anyway. So good to see him out there. He was excited. I'm going to play the audio for you at the end of the podcast about like all the questions that he answered, all the stuff that he relayed to the media after the game. But while he wasn't fantastic on the court, I think it's just more about the big picture on this one, and just having Bogey back unlocks a lot of things for this Hawks team. Aaron Holiday was good. He had not been playing the last few games, and credit to him for being locked in and being a pro. I know it's hard to be a veteran and not play for a while, and then suddenly be called upon and have a pretty big role in this game. And Holiday played well. He had 10 points, had 2 rebounds and an assist on only 5 shot attempts, made 2 threes. He shoots the ball well from 3-point range. Aaron Holiday has some weaknesses for sure. He's not someone who runs a ton of your offense as someone who is like 5'10", 5'11", but he can shoot and he can guard on the ball, and he was able to do those things in this game. And then Okongwu, I thought, played well defensively. He was very active, had a steal in this one. Rebounding was not like a huge factor for him. 3 fouls in 17 minutes is always kind of what happens with Okongwu, it seems like, but he was plus 10 and shot the ball well from mid-range. 10 points on 6 shots is very efficient. I thought he played well overall. To the starters, Jarrett Culver, again, a good night at the office, a game high plus 15 for Culver. I'm not sure that's necessarily indicative, but I thought he played well. 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. I was always high on Culver's like secondary stuff as a prospect, and the shooting has definitely let him down as a pro, but he made a 3 in this game. He was 3 of 5 on 2s, and Nate praised him for just the way that he's been playing hard, and I agree with that. He's been giving them a lot of defense. He's been playing the 4 some, which is not like his natural spot necessarily, but I think he did give them some good minutes once again in this game. Jalen Johnson, career high 10 rebounds, career high 4 assists, first career start. First half is better than the second half for Jalen, which might be expected. Like, this is a guy who's not played a lot of minutes so far. He played 33 in this game. That's definitely I believe, a career high as well, at least one that was not thrust upon him. So I thought Jalen was totally fine / good, better in the first half for sure, but some career nights for him across the board, and encouraging signs as he's going to have to be leaned on heavily over the next couple of weeks with John Collins out. Capella was his usual self in this game, 12 points, 11 rebounds. As soon as he was ruled in, I thought my optimism meter was quite a bit higher, because if Capella's out against Jokic and against the Nuggets, you're in some trouble. I'm not sure this is going to go over well, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I think if you were choosing one of Capella or Trae Young to be available against Denver, you might choose Capella just because of the matchup, in particular because of Jokic. Like, I don't think I don't think the Hawks wanted to have 48 minutes of Okongwu and Kaminsky having to deal with Jokic. And obviously Trae's a better player than Capella, so don't hear what I'm not saying. But in this matchup in particular, this is probably the number 1 matchup in the league where you would say that. But I think Capella being available was a huge part of the Hawks being able to hold up and hold serve and play defense in this game. Griffin was awesome. Again, I talked about this with Tyler Jones a little bit on the show yesterday, but it's like very easy to be like very, very, very positive about AJ Griffin. 24 points on 16 shot attempts, had 3 steals. He was active defensively. Not always perfect there by any means, but I think that he has been playing extremely well. He's under control. His feel is good. His floater range, his touch, 3-point shooting is obviously what it is. Like, he was great in this game. And in a huge moment as a number 2 option, like very clearly, like he was being schemed differently defensively in this one, because I think the Nuggets knew that he was their number 2 option behind Dejounte, and very obviously in this game, and he was still able to score efficiently and do it against a good team in Denver. Finally, Murray was really good in this one. So like he said, he's been up and down. I think early in the season, he played much better. The last, 10, 12 games, he's not been quite as good. He was very, very, very good in this game. 34 points on 22 shot attempts. Made his jump shots in this game. He was 4-7 from 3. He was 9 of 15 on 2s, which is totally fine. Got the line 6 times, had 8 assists, 1 turnover. I know Dejounte even said from the podium tonight that was his number 1 thing, was he only had 1 turnover in this game. I thought he was really good. Defensively, definitely made some plays, had a block shot, but I thought he was in control. And that's the one thing that the Hawks do have now, if Trey ever has to miss time, is that they can rely on 35 to 40 minutes of an all-star level player and Dejounte Murray to run all their stuff. I saw some talk about the staggering principles and maybe the Hawks playing without those guys a little bit more. I still think that you want to have Trey or Dejounte on the floor all times, but it is a reminder that the Hawks can play a more egalitarian style. I will say, Dejounte's usage rate was very high in this game still, as it should have been, because he had to carry a lot of weight. But the Hawks played 13 minutes without Dejounte in this game and won those minutes. That's kind of surprising to me, but I thought Aaron Holiday played well, and they were able to kind of play through other guys. I have been sort of advocating for more of Jalen Johnson in an on-ball role if they need more creation when it's not Trey and Dejounte playing together. That was kind of backed up in this game a little bit. I think Bogey also, once he's healthy especially, will give you another playmaker. It's easier to forget this now, but in the past, the Hawks have staggered Trey and Bogey in key moments in the playoffs because they wanted to have somebody like Bogey to carry some usage when Trey was off the floor. Now that's Dejounte in a lot of ways, but Bogey gives him another guy who can handle the ball and also create his own offense and for other people as well. So anyway, up and down the roster, the Hawks played very well in this game. And it was one of those moments when, like, if they lost on Wednesday in Orlando, it would have been like a lot of panic. It would have been their 4th loss in a row. And now they win that game, they hold serve, they come home, they win this game, and now they're 8-4 at home, and they're 13-10 overall. And their metrics don't look impressive necessarily, but you look up at the standings, and the Hawks are in sole possession of 4th place right now in the Eastern Conference. So, like, a lot of work to be done for sure, but not in a bad spot. And from here, by the way, the Hawks host the Thunder on Monday. And the Thunder are not a bad basketball team right now. They're actually better than you would think. They're 9-13. They actually play on Saturday in Minnesota. But the Thunder have Shea, and they are talented for sure. That's still a game that the Hawks, even with reasonable-ish health, should win at home. So we'll see how that goes. But they have Saturday off entirely, and then they practice on Sunday, and then a home game on Monday, and that's the schedule coming up for the Hawks. So, and by the way, if you're the Hawks, you might get Trey back in that game. You might get Trent Forrest back in that game. You might get Justin Holiday back in that game. So it might be a little bit closer to full strength. Obviously, they're still going to be without Hunter and Collins, which makes life difficult. But if they're more healthy than they were tonight, it would be a little bit easier to game plan and perform, generally speaking. So that's all I have for today on the podcast. Before I sign off, I will just say at the very end of this show, I'm going to toss on like this last 6 minutes or so, basically the entire media availability from Bogdanovic, because he was very open about like his struggles and the way that it's kind of gone. And the best way to kind of give you all that context is to have basically him answering all these questions, and you hear the question from the media. Not the best sound quality in the world. It's just one of those things that happens. I'm not a professional person on that level in terms of like capturing video, but you'll see that if you want to watch on YouTube, also hear it if you want to listen to it on your podcast platform of choice. But before I get to that, I want to thank you for listening to the podcast today and also subscribing to the show. Please leave 5-star ratings and please subscribe across platforms. If you want to help the show, the best possible way to do that, aside from subscribing to my Patreon individually, which is not about the podcast, but it's also about my writing, the best way to help the show itself is to subscribe and download across platforms. Set it to auto download on Apple or Spotify or wherever you like to listen to podcasts, and 5-star ratings and reviews. Also follow us on Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me on Twitter at BT Rowland. Spread the word about the podcast if you are a Hawks fan and those people that might be listening to Hawks podcasts. This is one that they might want to try. So that'd be fantastic. And with all that said, thank you for listening, everybody. And we'll have a show at some point in the near future. I will not guarantee a podcast before Monday, but at the very latest, I'll be back on Monday after the game between the Hawks and the Thunder. It's a home one, so we'll have full coverage of that as always. And after I sign off here, you'll hear Bogdanovic. But thank you for listening, everybody, and I appreciate it. We'll see you all next time.
How do you feel?
Amazing. I mean, really, we won a game. That's really what makes me happy, because otherwise I will probably feel really bad. But yeah, it's really exciting to be back, and happy to join the team, really.
I know it was not the perfect welcome back, but just what was it feel like shaking the rust off and just kind of working back into shape?
I honestly think it was perfect because I didn't expect, honestly, when I was checking in, I was really calm. Like, I know what I'm going to do and what is my job, and I was ready. But then, I don't know. I didn't expect that ovations and crowd going crazy. Like, I understand, but it was really, it was hard for me. It made me nervous, honestly, like a little kid. That's how I felt like first 2 minutes, and everyone's trying to talk to me. I can't hear nothing. Like, and it was crazy, really. And I think it was perfect. Yeah.
Okay, what was that feeling like earlier today to get to send out that Instagram post and know that, like, finally, after all of the hard work you put into rehab and everything, that you finally today get that opportunity?
Yeah, it was crazy, really. First time I experienced that type of injury, in my life, and I really love this game, really. Like, and it's just amazing, to go through that process, since last season, and the way I finished the season. It's kind of, when you get hurt and someone take that from you, you behave like a kid, really, and you want to come back really bad, and there was a lot of like tough nights, thinking, am I going to be myself, blah, 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 how long this is going to hurt. And I didn't have real setbacks, but at the end, I didn't know, I was really like pushing to come back at the beginning of the season. Then it didn't, everything didn't, it just needed more time to heal, and Dr. Neil Ilitraz was telling me that, it might be 5, it might be 6 months, this type of injuries like that. So I was really surrounded by family and people that were really, giving me that like positive spirit all the time. And that really helped me. And now I'm back, and hopefully for good.
So after you were playing, what did you realize, like, okay, I think this is becoming familiar, I'm back, and are you on any minute restrictions?
Like, I see what I need to do, but I cannot do it, like at that speed, because last time I played basketball, was different speed. So yeah, I will need to get back on my speed. But I really felt good, last season, like almost the whole year I played with one leg. It was really difficult to deal with it, a lot of like, it's not just playing, it's like sleeping, I couldn't sleep some nights. I couldn't, and that mess with your fatigue and stuff. It's more mental, of course I didn't expect to, come back dunking, but no pain at least. So that was what I was dealing with, and now I'm happy. Really, I was patient, and that's it. I'm ready. Thank you.
What has it been like to work with Paul?
He was helping me a lot, even during the tough times. He was one of the guys for sure. To keep pushing me, encouraging me, to do the work, and he was there all the time. I know Coach Nate sometimes give him a day off, but he's there. He and Cam, O'Neal and Malik, they're there every day. I know that. So shout out to them. And also big thanks to my PT staff as well, Marty, Taka. They really helped me a lot. Mike, strength coach. They were also, I was really pain in the ass for them because I was complaining, why does it hurt? I thought I'm going to start the season. I was really nervous. I was, I couldn't hide it from them. So I was mad at them. I was mad at doctor and everybody. So, but they were really patient, and they were there for me, and they were really supportive. So big thanks to them.
Okay, and watching, all the games this season, all of the practice, how were you able to kind of visualize how you would fit into everything, everything kind of changing a little bit with Dejounte?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident, in organization. So coaches and everybody. So I know I'll fit in right away. I knew the plays. I didn't even go through the plays. I did this morning a little bit, but I knew everything right away when I stepped on the floor, and I know our game. So, I feel like I'm type of the player that can fit anywhere. So I'm taught to play that team basketball. I know there's these small gaps, and that's my style. And I'm just trying to teach the other players, to play. I think that's a very effective way to play, and it's very fun as well.
Bogey, after going such a long stretch of trying to rehab and get back, when you finally did hit the floor tonight, did you feel any mental hesitation of wondering about the knee, or is that point it just it is blocked out?
No, because when you practice, you deal with this little pain, it's not even a pain, it's weakness. It's that mental weakness, and then you try to do, you lift and you feel good, and then you're on a court, because lifting and court stuff is different, and then when you need to play against somebody, it's another difference that you have, and another fear that you have to outcome, so I didn't have anything, I played against the coaches a ton of the times, against the players. I did my conditioning test. I did everything that I could. So I was really confident, really and I was aiming this game. I was aiming actually to play SEC, but I wasn't ready. I still, like you said, I had a little mental issues problem against SEC, and I couldn't go. So they give me another week, they said, let's aim to Denver, because there was 2 aims, that I had. But no, when I stepped on the floor, I was just nervous because of fans, honestly. I was there every night, and I didn't expect it, but it was fun.